Afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. In our ever-evolving world, the demand for efficient, reliable connectivity has never been higher. Today, we'll embark on a comprehensive exploration of automotive electrical connectors and how they play a pivotal role from basic electrical transmission to safety and diagnostic functions. I'm with Wayne Spence from Amphenol Sign, one of the world's global leaders in manufacturing of connectors. Welcome, Wayne.
Welcome, Rob. Welcome, everyone. It's great to be with you. Today, I'm looking forward to embarking on a comprehensive exploration into the world of automotive electrical connectors. With that being said, thanks for kickstarting it, Rob. And why don't we get into it with our next slide, the main roles of a connector. To simply start with electrical transmission, we've got our definition there, but what is the main role of a connector? When you think of component integration, the combination of electrical components into a functional electrical system, modularity and ease of assembly is important. Examples would include the capability to expand position counts, either with power or signal. Safety, it could be specific to a standard such as flame rating or even a dead front contact. Dead front contact is maybe where we put a polymer tip on it to keep individuals that may be touching those contacts from being harmed by the amperage. Safety, diagnostic. Example of diagnostic would be an integrated LED into a connector, which confirms signal or power is present. Standardization, how about a common contact system? For instance, with our automotive connectors, we have contacts that we can apply against families of connectors, and that's going to certainly benefit with applications such as crimping, extraction tools, and any commonality that we can put in, thus the standardization. Space optimization, not just connector footprint, but also ease of coupling and uncoupling. In other words, if we can fit the connector into the application, but the connectors adjacent to it are too close, what is the coupling mechanism that is going to allow disconnect and connection? Weather and environmental protection, dust and water ingress are first to enter our thinking, but what if we thought about temperature and chemical, lubricant, proximity? In other words, what are the effects when you combine chemical and lubricants to that weather, to that overall environment application picture? Reduction in wiring complexity, can I accomplish the power and signal together? Can I integrate pneumatic? Can I put intelligent signal into one connector body? These are all considerations of the main roles of a connector that we face. Continuing on, the importance of selecting the right connectors. First, let's start with performance. Certainly ensuring optimal electrical conductivity and signal integrity is paramount. Unsuitable connectors degrade performance through resistance or interference. Example would be, say you have a tray or a static application versus high vibration. With one connector, you could certainly achieve what you're trying to accomplish in that static environment. But if it's high vibration, like near a motor or even on a servo motor, contact fretting could occur if we apply the wrong connector. This is going to increase resistance, may not show up initially, but certainly over time, that's going to create some challenges in our interconnect system. Next up, durability and longevity. Connectors designed for harsh conditions withstand these. Vibration, temperature, moisture. The wrong connectors are going to deteriorate over time, but let's take a look at those individually. Vibration, there's advanced coupling systems or enhanced strain reliefs that are available to mitigate that vibration. Temperature fluctuations, some of the things that we're going to introduce our connectors to would be ice water submersion. How could we introduce to our connector to see how it's going to hold up if we place it in -40 for a period of a few minutes and then bring it out to ambient and do some rapid succession testing? A freezer test. Maybe we'll leave that connector with some wiring with a cable assembly in a freezer for 6 or 8 or even overnight when we're talking 24 hours. And then at a pre-described height, we're going to drop it on the floor. And we're going to repeat that in short order to see how that connector is going to show up in those cold and ambient temperatures and even in excess of ambient temperatures. Moisture, When we introduce UV, such as xenon arc testing to mimic sunlight exposure over time, it's certainly something that we want to introduce to our connectors so that we can see how they're going to perform with years to come. But of course, we can't wait years for these new introductions and as fast as technology. But all these are considerations, all these are test parameters that we're going to introduce to connectors based on their environment. And what are we going to mitigate? Those frequent repairs and then, of course, replacements. Safety and compatibility, mismatch or incorrect connectors can cause reversed or cross connections. Now, how can we mitigate that? By color coding housings or even wedge locks, having different wedge locks that are going to provide keying to continue to make sure that the integrity of that connection is what we should have. Loose connections, short circuits, improper grounding, potentially leading to electrical fires and malfunctioning equipment. In other words, this occurs when unwanted voltage exists and there's no safe path to ground the fault current. The importance of selecting the right connectors as we continue on. Sealing and IP protection. Industrial applications require this and insist upon this, as well as automotive. The right connector provides water protection, dust protection, protection against environmental factors. But what about petroleum-based products? An end cap, as you see here on this slide, may be what's needed. When you think of these silicon seals and how they protect from water ingress to the back, they work great. But if they're in an environment where you have petroleum-based products, what they tend to do is they tend to expand, or they may even expand to the point where they start to potentially dislodge from the housing. So an added feature would be an end cap, like you see there at the top of those pictures. Ease of integration. Transportation applications have very complex electrical systems. The right connector ensures systems communicate together effectively and they function seamlessly. Standardization and regulation compliance. When you look at that, there's so many different standards: customer standards, institutional standards, domestic standards, and international standards. All of those have to be considered when we're looking at trying to design in correct connectors. And certainly any type of those features that we can integrate into our standard products as we confront them and as we can integrate into it is certainly going to allow us to put it in additional markets and additional applications. And then lastly, reliability. Intermittent or unreliable connections can lead to breakdowns, customer dissatisfaction, and nobody wants deterioration of their brand reputation. In short, connectors used in automotive applications enable everything from stereo systems to drivetrains, and these options are constantly expanding. Continuing on, core factors for selecting the right connectors: current ratings or current density, voltage ratings, which is your operating voltage, will determine other parameters, other inputs such as your wire size, the number of contacts. This will contribute to the connector size and contact engagement force. Environmental conditions such as temperature and moisture must be considered. Contaminants such as brake fluids and antifreeze could be present. How do we design in fail-safes? How do we introduce connectors that can succeed in these environments? Mechanical factors, we've talked a little bit about vibration, locking and mating mechanism. Those locking and mating mechanisms are going to differ from application to application. Different connectors, different series, different families are going to have different attributes when it comes to locking and mating. Types of termination could be solder contacts, could be machine contacts. Material, plastic or metal. If it's a salt spray environment, certainly customers are going to want to lean towards plastic. If it's a drone application, metal may not be preferred because of the weight contributions. But if it's a rugged environment where maybe limbs, trees, thinking of forestry, may come in contact with those connectors, a robust metal connector could be all that's needed. Signal integrity, such as contact platings, tin over nickel, silver, gold. Gold comes in a variety of different platings, gold flash, maybe G5, G10, all the way up to G30, also known as heavy gold plating. An interconnect which meets your application environmental requirements is a must. Continuing on, core factors or current ratings. Considerations are going to include overheating, current exceeding rated capacity of the connector. Over time, it's going to degrade the materials. It's going to even melt or deform the plastic components of the connector. Reduced insulation lifespan, excessive current causes faster wear and tear on the contact, shortens overall lifespan. So important for a quality insulation, combined with making sure that we have the right temperature rating on the connector for the application and the environment that it's going to be in. Increased resistance. This could be caused by wear due to excessive current, further exacerbates overheating, leads to voltage drops. Fire risk. Certainly, we've seen this, very unwanted. Nobody wants this. VO comes into play, flame ratings, vertical, horizontal. But this happens when the connector is carrying more current than it's designed for. Extreme cases can indeed cause fire hazards, especially if near flammable materials such as transportation or the automotive applications that we often see these connectors fall in. System failure. An overheated or failed connector can disrupt or flow current, causing system malfunctions and complete system failures. As an example of some of the ways that we try and mitigate that, we have over on the side one of our ATM H series. That H is going to stand for high temperature. There we're using thermoplastics that certainly go up an additional 25 Celsius to help mitigate those risks, often in those high temperature environments, but also caused by inaccurate application in regards to current ratings. Continuing on, core factors for voltage ratings. What is it? The highest voltage that may be continuously applied to a circuit. Voltage ratings are determined by the thickness of the primary plastic insulation with other considerations. Electrical arcing or flashover. This occurs when applied voltage exceeds the connector's rated voltage, leads to damage or melted contacts or even fire. Reduced insulation lifespan can occur as well. This is when over voltage stresses and degrades insulation and other materials, reducing its overall lifespan. Connector failure, applying a higher voltage than the connector is rated for, could potentially disrupt the entire system. Connector failure, on to safety hazards. And incorrect voltage rating exposes users or even technicians out in the field to electrical shocks or burns, especially if the connector breaks down or arcs over time. And incomplete system malfunctions. Fails due to an incorrect voltage rating leads to intermittent connections, data loss, or complete system malfunctions. Continuing on to core factors, number of contacts. This is going to direct us to current carrying capacity. Each contact has a specific current capacity. When you look at the bottom of this slide, you can see some illustrations of different inserts featuring power, in some cases 100 amps, down to signal. And then you have mixed inserts. Down to the bottom right-hand corner, you can see that 100 amps all the way down to 7.5 amps from our size 4 contacts to our size 20. These shell sizes for this particular subseries that we call Duramate come in a shell size 18 and a 24, the larger being the shell size 24. Certainly we can get more power, more contacts in it, but again, we want to be cognizant of the real estate that's available in the footprint of the connector. So having two options, one larger, one smaller, to give you the precise amount of voltage, current, amperage, and signal contacts in one package is going to be critical. So signal integrity, redundancy, the versatility that we just talked about from different sizing, different mixture of inserts, whether they be power or signal, and in future proofing, design with extra contacts. In other words, you may install into your system a 20 position insert configuration, but initially maybe you only need 12 or even 14. We have seal plugs that you can install into those connectors, particularly if you know that over time, modular introductions, other software, other applications, other things that interconnect system needs to manage will be added in the months to come, years to come, or even as added features that may be added to a particular application. Continuing on, core factors. How about environmental conditions? Factoring in environmental conditions, one can ensure the longevity and reliability of the connector and the overall electrical system. What does that mean? Temperature, current carrying capacity, degradation, material expansion, and corrosion are all going to be critical core factors with these environmental conditions. With temperature, what is the operating environment? What are the appropriate temperature ratings? What are they compared to that connector? The current that will be applied to it, the amperage, the voltage that will be applied to it, and what will be the subsequent current carrying capacity of that interconnect system. Degradation over time, again, so critical to get it sized right for the particular environment and all the introductions that will be included in that environment, such as IP, water and ingress, that we'll talk a little bit more later on. What's going to happen when you introduce heat or even cold? You're going to get fluctuations of material as far as expansion and contraction. How do we control that? Well, thermoplastic connectors, typically they're going to have different substances, different chemical makeup that's going to mitigate some of the expansion or mitigate some of the contractions of that connector. And certainly by the right combination of these thermoplastics, we can accomplish that. Corrosion environments like saltwater, industrial areas with acids, they can degrade metal contacts over time. So sealing is absolutely critical. In the picture you can see here, you can see a seal in the bottom of that receptacle. That's going to complement that plug when it's introduced. On the back of that flange, as it mates into that manifold, there's another seal that's there as well. So IP from a water, from a dust standpoint, chemical, everything that you see in that connector from the seal to the thermoplastics are rated for that particular environment. So critical. Continuing on, the core factors, environmental conditions, moisture, conductive pathways, sealing and ingress, IP ratings, system reliability. What is that environment? Is it humid or wet environments? What are good sealing properties to have in a connector? When we think about IP rating, we think about water and dust, but there's so much more to consider. Some of our connectors, we're going to introduce a UV variant. As I mentioned before, a UV Xeon arc test could be introduced to that connector for hundreds, if not thousands of hours. And then as you apply the water, the dust ingress, as you can see in the top of this screen, from IP65 to IP69K, it's going to be typical ratings of automotive connectors. What will be the effects of those IP ratings after those connectors have been introduced to harsh environments? This is certainly a way that we can speed up that potential degradation that can occur to those connectors and now introduce different variables regarded in our ingress protection or IP ratings. So those conductive pathways, moisture can create conductive pathways. Sealing, the thermoplastic materials that we're using, absolutely critical to mitigate that. As we talked about sealing and ingress protection, these industrial and automotive applications increasingly are going to require weatherproof or sealed connection systems against all manners of contaminants. And as you read your reports, as you investigate those connectors, certainly that testing and those validations are available specific to your application so that we can make sure that we correct size and correct match a good Amphenol connector to that application. And then, of course, where are we headed? System reliability down at the bottom. Correct IP rating can prevent short circuits or malfunctions to ensure interconnect integrity. Core factors, circular or rectangular, that's really the two main footprints of our connectors and interconnects that we have today. You can see some pictured down at the bottom. Circular options for our automotive connectors would include our ATHD or HD, Duramate, and many more. Rectangular options, you can see some viewed there on the right. That's our new ARB series. That connector works great with firewalls and interfaces between, say, an engine compartment and a cab. But there you can see some of our sub-series that are rectangular options. Really, there's a plethora of options available as you design your electrical interconnect systems that we can offer to you. They're going to provide you with environmental sealing, compact design, polarization, think about keying, versatility, high density, ease of assembly, modularity that we talked about before. Can I add other similar connectors to my overall footprint, my electrical interconnect system? Circular options, rectangular options. Within those two footprints, we can certainly prescribe to you an integrated connector for your particular system. Continuing on. It was a great honor for us, Rob, our Amphenol A-Series connectors that Waytech named us 2023 Product of the Year. So thank you very much for that honor. I can tell you this, Waytech is a tremendous distributor for us, and we really appreciate all that you've done. You can see there some of our A-series connectors maybe that we haven't been able to show previously in this presentation. But Rob, really thank the Waytech team for all your support and all that you've done for us.
Thank you, Wayne. And the A-series family, was selected for our award for high quality, utility, and quick global acceptance by all our customers. Wayne, could you tell us more about the diverse applications and benefits of the A-series?
Yeah, let's continue on the next slide, and let's talk about some of those diverse applications. You can see here we've got industrial, sensor interconnect, power distribution, control systems. These are very involved, very rigorous. It could be from a bulldozer to a tractor. We consider those in that industrial. Certainly transportation, there's some overlap in that. So various automotive systems are going to use these connectors. The reliability, the vibration, the moisture, the temperature fluctuations that we've talked about before, those are all going to be utilized in our automotive systems, to include marine and recreational applications as well. Energy would be another place that these connectors, again, coming out of that transportation, coming out of that automotive silo, if you will, or that marketplace. You look at the benefits of these connectors. Anytime you introduce something from an automotive or transportation, that's going to speak to volumes. That's certainly going to help instill in those connectors and those connector packages some of those rigorous capabilities for reliability and integrity that now can transcend to something like energy, renewable energy systems like solar and wind power installations. That ruggedness and that ability to handle harsh environments is certainly something that's required in those fields as well. Heavy equipment and agriculture, another classic place where these automotive traditional connectors can be found. They can be used in implements, behind the tractor, on the tractor, mining equipment, machinery, forestry would certainly be in that realm that these connectors are going to excel at. And then even military. When we think of applications, think about in the past a Humvee, or today the new JLTV military system that's going to carry troops to and from the lines and get them there quickly. This is certainly connectors that are capable of some very harsh environments, and what's more demanding than some of those environments that our soldiers are going to see out on the battlefield. Continuing on. We take a look specifically at our AT series of connectors, and in the top right picture, you can kind of see an illustration of that connector unassembled. You can see the wires coming in from the bottom left and top right to give you an idea of the contacts and how they're applied to the conductors, the housings, and then there's those wedge locks that we talked about earlier. That's going to secure those contacts into place and make sure that there's no movement. So for example, they can pass the rigors of that vibration test, and they're going to be durable over time. Those seals that you see in the back, those orange seals, silicone seals, or even in the front, that front ring seal, that's going to help us with that environmental protection, sealing connectors against those external elements. So AT also comes in standard, like you see in the top picture, the top illustration, but different variants that we offer at Amphenol and at Waytech, such as our Structure Plus. And when you look at that Structure Plus connector, and you look at the connector that's up at the top, you say, wait a minute, there's a little bit of added structure there. Well, what we've done there is we've added that additional structure in case a customer wants to put heat shrink or glue shrink to dress up a connection system. Maybe they have extreme washdown environments like some lawn mowing equipment or ag equipment. Added protection in the form of glue shrink or heat shrink could certainly add to that. But we also have customers that have overmolded connector applications. In other words, they're going to introduce a cable assembly to the back of the Structure Plus connectors, and we can overmold over the top of it. That added structure, of course, would be critical in making that happen. And then down at the bottom, our AT series or LED, again, another attribute, and we have many more beyond this slide of different sub-series that make up our AT. But here you can see an LED, a full body in the center. Translucent material is used so that you can see that LED from the front of the connector all the way to the rear. And then we have different variations of that where you can see the LED translucent back in on the rear of the connector to detect if there's signal or if there's power on that particular application. So this is our AT series of connector. They're at 13 amps, and they really perform well in this automotive sector for us. As we continue on, you'll see here on the next slide our ATM. And when you see that M, just think of miniature. It's very similar to our AT, but as I mentioned with the AT, that's 13 amps of power. This is 7.5, so a little bit smaller. Consequently, we get about 30% reduction in size. So now think about that footprint and think about that overall package size. If you don't have that availability of space, well, here's an option for you. Of course, you're going to have to move down into the amperage, but if you can accommodate that 7.5 max on the ATM, this would be a great fit to you. And just like we've done with the AT, where we have half dozen or 10 or even more different variations of the AT. Here you can see with the ATM, you've got the H series. We kind of highlighted that before. That goes all the way up to 150C. So think about those under hood applications, or maybe it's close to an engine manifold. ATM series 2-wire CAN system. So think about CAN bus systems, particularly in agriculture equipment. You know, how would they control the implements behind the tractor, the sprayer, turning it on, turning it off, controlling the flow rate? All those things are made possible by CAN bus systems. And of course, our connectors are in the center of that. ATM and SF01, the SF we call a snap fit. So that's that back cap that's on the back of our ATM. We kind of touched on that earlier. You know, the control of the rear seal. In certain applications, you're going to get introduction of some chemicals or maybe some lubricants, petroleum derivatives. You really want to make sure that you can contain that seal. This is a very low cost and effective way of doing that should you require it. And there's these enhancements that we've done to the ATM series and many more, but just highlighting a few to let you know what's available out there as far as a connector package that you can integrate into your system. Here's a few for your viewing. And on the next slide, when we look at ATP, well, think of that P, think of power. So we started with AT 13 amps, ATM 7.5 amps. Now we're at 25 amps of power. So this is going to be a connector that's going to come and be offered in a 2, a 4, and even a 6 position. So 25 amps of power, 6 position circuit. It's really close as far as that tactile feel, that audible click that our AT, ATM, ATP, again, it's just going to give you an increase in available amperage. Structure Plus also available in our ATP. And another thing that we want to highlight too is as well is our board lock. Now we're showing board lock ATP here, and you can see what that is. That's PC tail contacts integrated into flange mount. We also have flangeless connector series that can be mounted, but we also have board lock connectors available in the previously viewed AT and ATM as well. As we continued on, you can see here our ATHD. Now think of power up to 100 amps of power in a single pole connector, ATHD. And from some of those images there, you can see we have a board lock option at 6 o'clock. You can see where you'd have a snap fit integration that snaps in that is capable of holding that single pole connector. Again, 100 amps of power. So you're going to have a pretty sizable wire to be able to carry that type of amperage. But you can also see that we have panel mount and flange mount variations of this. And then once again, we've got that Structure Plus built into our AHD that if you do want to put that shrink on the back of it or do an overmolding, this is certainly capable. But I really want to speak to here. Notice the silicone sealing. You can see it in the rear of these connectors. You can also find it in the front, or it's hard to view from this particular angle. But sealing IP68, IP69K sealing on all of these connector series is really a must. And today, when we're developing connectors, the floor is IP68 and IP69K and even IP69K dynamic, where you actually have fluctuation or movement of the wires of the cables being introduced while you've got water ingress happening at the X, Y, and Z axis. But this is our ATHD series. Again, another key connector that can be found in many automotive and transportation settings. As we continue on, our AHD series, tried and tested 6 position and also 9-position, and you can see both of those insert layouts. Quick locking coupling system, very definitive as you apply it. Uses, as do all of the previous connector series, uses our standard A series common contact system. Now think about that. Think about how you can use a family of contacts and apply it to multiple series. In this case, our A series family of connectors. But this is a tried and tested, even appears in diagnostic, a lot of diagnostics when you think about over-the-road trucking and how the mileage of those trucks and GPS positioning is factored in. These connectors have found themselves in a variety of different settings. Now here's our Duramate AHDP and AHDM. Notice the P is for plastic, the M is for metal. You can see that pictured at the top on the right-hand side, our plastic and black, and then our metal. These are tremendous connectors going all the way up to IP69K. So from an IP standpoint, there's very, very few settings or applications that these connector series are not going to thrive in. Also, as you look further down that collection of imagery there of different connectors, you can see we've got panel mount options. We also have jam nut options as well. But these connectors, quick locking, bayonet, once again, that audible click, that tactile feel that so many customers love. The plastic, of course, going to be lightweight. They're going to excel in ag. They're going to excel in saltwater environments. And in the metal connectors, using the same inserts, metal versus plastic, so they're interchangeable, just like the contact system. If it's a more robust requirement, if it's a more heavy duty, if there's going to be some rough contact, such as forestry, or even in some of the heavy equipment applications, that metal is going to be a great alternative for you. Relatively compact design when you think about the amperage, the voltage, the combination of signal and power that are integrated into these connectors. But this is a great line for us called the Duramate HDP and HDM series of connectors. All right, we'll talk a little bit about compatibility. So Amphenol is known for continuous innovation, but compatibility is so important. Interchangeability, when connectors are compatible with other leading brands, users can easily replace or integrate them into existing systems without major changes or redesigns. Flexibility, cost efficiency, supply chain reliability, and of course, who is this going to benefit? This is going to benefit you, the engineer that's looking to design this into your application, and you want multiple channels, you want multiple manufacturers that can produce the same product. And this is really a page that Amphenol kind of wrote these pages back coming out of World War II. Specifically, when you think about mil-spec standards, think about 38999, 26482 are probably the most famous. The mil-spec 5015, those were all derived by companies like Amphenol, who really, coming out of World War II, really controlled, if you will, all of the connectors that went on our military equipment, our tanks, and our planes. And of course, because of the importance of military operations, the United States government cannot just have one or very few manufacturers of a particular connector product. So what happened, what occurred? Well, Amphenol sat down and essentially helped to establish these specifications that I just previously mentioned. Very similar to our Amphenol A series, which we've highlighted a few of the sub-series in previous slides. What we've done is we've really focused on that interchangeability. We wanted to make sure that we offered the marketplace a drop-in fit, form, and function connector, knowing that we may not always control the receptacle side and the plug side, but we needed to make sure that our customers, our potential customers, engineers that were looking to spec our products in to their very important architectures and interconnect systems, that they knew that they were in compliance with each other. So as we've talked about before, the housings, the seals, the contacts, the platings, all of those things very similar to what Amphenol has accomplished going back to the late 1940s, and certainly since that time in establishing specifications for military operations. We've taken that and applied it to a heavy equipment, to agriculture, to marine, and now to automotive. So there are some other competitors out there that have these similar style of connectors. But when we set out to begin going down this road 18 years ago, what we knew we had to do was we had to have a connector that was suitable from the left side to the right side from the contacts. And certainly we're happy to report that compatibility. We've got 15, almost 20 years now of a lot of customers benefiting from this, a lot of automotive customers for certain. But we're just happy to report that that compatibility offers you a wide range of options going forward. When certainly manufacturers run into, for example, in 2020, that global event that we had, certainly purchasing people, sourcing teams were scrambling to find a connector. This is certainly going to give you a wider range of availability from a manufacturing standpoint, but knowing at the same time that it's going to have all of the interchangeability that you need, and hopefully from an Amphenol perspective, cost efficiency, supply chain reliability, and once again, empowerment to you, the customer, can be instilled in that product as well. But we look forward to talking with you about our Amphenol product line. So that speaks a little bit about the compatibility. Now navigating the market, when we talk about correct wiring and proper installation, polarization and keying, utilize the built-in polarization and keying features of connectors to prevent interconnect mating. Well, we got a great example of that over on the right-hand side. When you look at what we call wedge locks, you've got a green wedge lock, an orange, a brown, and a black. If you look very closely at the orange and the black, you can see there's 4 holes in the orange. And when you go down to the black, you can see those holes are in a little bit different place. So that involves the keying. That keying is illustrated when you look at the green and the brown. You can see a peg, if you will, or a keying feature that would extend. In other words, if that keying feature doesn't meet with that mating wedge lock to allow acceptance, there is no mateability. So this is one of the great ways that we can take a very cost competitive thermoplastic connector that can work in a wide range of environments, can excel from high IP requirements, vibration, temperature. But here we can use that same basic housing, that footprint, but by using different keying options that we have, we can facilitate the avoidance of mismating. We can also do that with the housings themselves. You probably noticed in the earlier pictures, not only do we have gray, we have black, we have green. I can continue that on. I think in totality now, our AT product line has 7 different color options from yellow to orange to red. Again, these all make up polarization and keying and helping to make sure the integrity of these mating systems is what our engineers would want them to be. Strain relief would be another one. When we think about strain relief, we have strain reliefs that go on the back of it that are going to certainly help with the IP rating. We've got a slide to show you that a little bit later, so we'll save that for more there. Avoid exceeding ratings. Well, there's a great tip, right? If a connector is rated at 13 amps, you certainly don't want it in an application that's more than that. Temperature, as we've talked about, IP rating, make sure that we're matching the connector for that particular application. Specifications, regularly check with Amphenol's data sheets or guidelines for any updates or changes to connector specifications. We say that because we're constantly upgrading our connectors. As we're looking to certainly maintain fit, form, and function, because remember, we've got an installed base that's been out there for 15 or 20 years. We've got to continue that, but certainly if we can enhance that connector with additional sealing characteristics, additional temperature, flame ratings, those types of things, we're going to want to bring that to the table. So certainly stay in close contact with your WATEC representative, your Amphenol representative, so that we can share those updates with you. As we continue on to the next slide, you can see here key takeaways. I know we've covered a lot here in a short period of time, but at a very high level. But Amphenol Sign Systems and WATEC, leading companies, industrial interconnect systems. We've talked about the importance of correct connector selection, the versatility of those connectors, the various different shapes and sizes tailored to specific applications, widespread market impact. This goes to speak to that amount of diverse applications that if you take a great connector that can achieve very high IP temperature levels. And certainly it's got to have a cost benefit. In other words, there's connectors that we're going to manufacture that we're going to place in the most technologically advanced aircraft that's available today, United States military, or even in commercial airways, but matching up that application with a cost-effective connector, and nobody does that as good as Amphenol. The best practices, correct installation of any of our connectors is always going to be an integral part of having a successful interconnect system. Again, I know we've covered a lot. These are the key takeaways. But here I've got some good news. Certainly, when you look over to the right, we call it a virtual handshake request. You know, when you think about those times where you've needed help in specifying a connector, you're looking at a wide range of connectors for a particular application, and there's that information you can see on the flyer, on the catalog, on the data sheet. But wouldn't it be great to talk to an engineer? Wouldn't it be great to talk to a seasoned product manager, a great customer service person over at Waytech and Amphenol? Well, we call that our virtual handshake request. And by simply going to our amphenol-sign.com website, you can click on our virtual handshake, which is prominently pictured on our website, and you can pick the date and you can pick the time. And as you fill in that information, the remarks, it'll ask you a series of questions about your application. The more information, the better. But here's our Amphenol and Waytech promise to you, is that we're going to complement what you've added to that virtual handshake with the product manager if required, with an engineer if required, a business development person. And we're going to make sure that that we can move your requirements forward as quickly as we can. And what's great about that is, you know, of course, we're going to give you quite a few different options. That's why that information is so important. But when you look at Amphenol, there is no shortage of connector options that we have. And isn't it great to talk to a product manager that's got decades of experience, or an engineer that's been working in that field for a long period of time? And hey, if you need something that's not standard, a twist of this or a dash of that, certainly if quantities are prevalent and they can dictate that return on the investment that you'll need, certainly a custom connector could be in the offering as well. But we just like to say with our virtual handshake that we make it easy for you, the engineer, to get your questions answered, to get the input you needed in a timely fashion so that you can get that off your desk and get into that validation stage. That's our virtual handshake request.
Wow, great stuff, Wayne. Looks like we do have enough time to address one question today. And that question is, where can I go about finding more information like this? To find more information, please visit waytechwire.com/Amphenol. From there, you can visit and view our wide selection of connectors, supporting data sheets and brochures, white papers, and 3D models. Waytech is continually onboarding new to the market products through Amphenol's innovation. Wayne, I just want to thank you for guiding us with the tools and knowledge needed to make informed decisions on how to choose automotive connectors.
Oh, it was my pleasure, Rob. Thank you so much for hosting me, and so much for the Waytech team and all your contributions to Amphenol. It's greatly appreciated. And thanks everyone for joining us today. I appreciated sharing some of my insights into connectors and overall about Amphenol.
Thank you all for participating today. Now, Katie, I'll pass things back to you for some closing remarks.